We are going to get this started. My name is Lachlan Curry. I'm one of the co-chairs of PSEP. All of our other members introduce themselves, but this is the Race, Ethnicity, and Other Subcommittee of the Portland Committee on Community Age Policing. We're happy to have all of y'all here.
Good evening, Marcia Perez. I'm also on the PSEP Race, Ethnicity, and Other Subcommittee, and I work for the Department of Justice.
And I'm Sam Sachs, Chair of the Subcommittee, Race, Ethnicity, and Others, and the member of PSEP.
Thank you. One quick note about videoing tonight. Any video recording devices, there are youth in the room, so please do not record anybody's face. And there's going to be some sensitive stories that will be shared, and so I respectfully just ask that folks don't record. That would be our preference, but if you do, so realize that there are minors in the room, so not to record anybody's face, and just kind of respect the raw nature of this.
And again, I want to go a step further. Out of respect for the people, there's a lot of personal stories that are happening here tonight, and we would ask to not record at all, video, audio. So I see a lot of people shaking their heads. So if you are video and audio recording, we ask that you not do that, out of respect for the people that are sharing their stories and are here today. Thank you.
So this is our committee discussion on gun violence. Really, the genesis of this is the gang enforcement team's change to the gun violence reduction team, and a lot of community questions that we were hearing at our meetings and through other public sessions about really what was that change when the team became the gun violence reduction team. And so what we wanted to do was bring together a meeting where the gun violence reduction team could talk about those changes, what are their priorities, and then also to allow the community to have an opportunity to give their feedback. PSEP, the Portland Committee on Community Age Policing, is tasked with making recommendations to the city to better improve relationships between police and the community. And so we're going to take a lot of this information back from you today to make recommendations. You can attend our public meetings to find out more about that, but Marcia is going to help you take notes, and the rest of our members as well, to really see what comes out of this meeting and how can we improve those relationships. I want to thank Assistant Chief Shear for his hard work in helping things together, Mary Claire as well, both from the police department and getting the officers here and sharing that information and being willing to take this, to have this discussion. And we put us together a set of rules, and I'll just pass these around and just help you ways to communicate. Our ground rules for tonight are trust, open-mindedness, assume positive intent, listen with intent, safety to be brave and vulnerable, and that's going with the recording and all, just everything, just making this a safe space for everybody to share their thoughts. Effective communication, don't take things personal, don't make assumptions, feel comfortable to clarify things with questions, be free to call a bias, step up and step back. So if you're talking a lot, taking a step back, and if you're not, feeling free to share your opinion. Integrity, and work as a group to take care of one another. Is there any other group agreements that you all think we should follow this evening that we didn't mention? Great. So the agenda for tonight, just did our welcome, just did our ground rules. We're going to start with the community panel. We have 3 community members and an officer who are going to share their experience with gun violence in the community. Then it's going to be followed by a GVRT presentation, which is up here already. That'll be about roughly 25 to 30 minutes. This is part 1 of a 2-part discussion. So this discussion is going to talk about the GVRT team and what it does. There'll be a second session that will go more into the data and the statistics that I know a lot of community members are looking for. And that's going to be held at our PSEP meeting in the future. After that, after the question and answer session, we'll do 2 breakout groups. We'll be able to talk more about the recommendations and what things we would like to see from GVRT, and then we'll do a report back and next steps. Does that make sense?
The blue cards that are going around are for you to write down your thoughts or questions when the GVRT presents, or you hear something that you want to ask a question about or you have a thought. So it's for you to write down for yourself.
Right. And we will be facilitating this and making sure it's a structured meeting, so we just ask that everybody has respect for everybody who's presenting, everybody who's sharing. If at any point we feel like it's teetering off in the wrong direction, we'll make decisions based on that. But I think that we're going to have a really good discussion. So I want to thank you all again for being here. I'm going to ask our community panel to come up. We have Nelson Gonzalez, Roy Moore, Jason Huber, and Royal Harris. So if y'all can come up, we can get some chairs up here for them. If you could, so the point of this community panel is to hear more perspectives from the community on gun violence, from both community perspectives as well as the police. And what I'd like us to go through is just starting down there. Now, if you could just say your name, what organization you work with, your pronouns, and who you're representing tonight, or who you represent in the community.
So my name is Nelson Gonzalez. I'm here as a community member, so I'd rather not share where I work. I'm here as a community member. I go by he, him, and I'm here for the youngsters that I've lost through the years.
I'm Roy Moore. I'm an outreach worker. I also work with healing hurt people who are in the hospital. I'm here to tell my story because I think it's power in hearing people's testimonies that been through life challenges and made it through it.
I'm Jason Hubert. I work for the City of Portland, police officer. He, him. And I got lots of stories too about Police Bureau, Community too. I also live in the community. So I'm excited about this.
My name is Royal Harris. I'm a community member. I go by Royal. I'm here because, kind of like Jason, I've been around this for a long time, and I share quite a few stories with him and both of these men, and I really see this as an opportunity as someone who's been around since the Genesis to make sure that this ship gets steered in the right direction.
And before you started, I want to acknowledge two things that there is a shooting today that happened in Vancouver. It seems to be an ongoing situation, so we want to send our thoughts to those individuals and just see that gun violence is a real thing in our community, something that continues to happen. I also just want to acknowledge the lack of presence of women on this panel, and that's something that we want to continue to work on and make sure that they're represented as well. So that's something for the future that we'll continue to work on. The question I'm asking the panel members is, what is your lived experience and or work experience with gun violence here in Portland? Each of you will have up to 5 minutes to share that. That's a community 5 minutes. You can do the time or anything like that. But any of y'all can start.
Could I ask you all to speak up just a little bit, please?
Do you have a microphone?
We do.
You may not need a microphone, but if you just speak up.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm old.
Okay, I got you. So
I have old ears. Thank you.
Yep. The question is, what is your lived experience and or work experience with gun violence here in the community here in Portland? We will each have up to 5 minutes, and whoever would like to start by sharing, I would just remind everybody that these are our personal stories, so just keep that open, and for the panelists, share as much as you feel comfortable. Feel free to leave out names or dates or anything else that might, clarify something that makes you more than you'd like to.
So I've been working with youth for the last 7 years, and it's something that I'm very passionate about. I've gotten to know youth personally. I've gotten to know the families to the point where they'll invite me to come eat, and I won't pass a plate. That's just what I do, and I enjoy that work. It's my life. But through the years, I've lost several youth to gun violence. And sometimes I'll be asked a question, then why do you still do it? Because if one youngster is saved, then I'm doing my job. And it's not a job, it's my passion, it's my love. And answering this question, it reminds me of different faces, of different places, of seeing a youth of mine on a Friday night, and whenever I talk to my kids, I'm like, hey, be safe. Nelly, I'm gonna be safe. You know that. And then I'll get a phone call that Monday. Nelly, did you hear? Did I hear what? So-and-so's no longer here. And that gives me, it fires me up to want to keep doing what I'm doing. And I will do it as long as I can. These are beautiful youngsters that are no longer here. To sit in a room and watch the tears from moms and them sharing stories with me, it's painful. It's painful. I think about them all the time. If I'm watching youth basketball games, I'll remember one of my youngsters, that was his thing, playing basketball, and he's not here. Or one of my Kelly kids, that part I'll say. I got to know him real close, and I lost him a year and a half ago. You know, but it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. I'll continue to do what I gotta do, and my kids know. I call them my kids because I could be their dad, you know, and they know that if they're hanging out with me, they're gonna get a taco. You know, so that's just my thing. And there's something about food that opens up a youngster to talk to. And I don't know why I just went into the whole food thing, but it's something important. That's how I connect with them. And yeah, just gotta keep working. Keep working.
Thank you for sharing that. Can I just ask a quick follow-up question from your perspective? What are some of the main causes that you see that cause the gun violence amongst you in the community?
What caused the gun violence? Mental health is one of them, for a fact. Sometimes a resource that's needed and they couldn't get that resource provided to them, so they have to go out and get it. And unfortunately, they've lost their life while trying to get it. You know, some of these youth, it's like watching them come to school and sometimes they're already at 100. You know, I'll tell them, I don't know if you ate today. I don't know if you had to feed your siblings today. I don't know if you had to make sure that they got to school. I don't know what dangers they faced before they walked into the school, right? So if a youngster sees his little brother, his little sister hungry, and his means of getting it is going out there and doing what he's got to do, and they're out there doing what they got to do. And that's real stories. And unfortunately, I've had youth lose their lives trying to provide.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody can go next. Feel free.
The question is, my experiences with...
Yeah, lived experience and or work experience with gun violence here in Portland.
You know, I'm from Portland. I was raised in this community. And, you know, I was affected by gun violence at a very early age. In 5th grade, I witnessed my older brother get shot. And then when I was in senior year, when I was 18, I was in the car when my best friend was shot and killed. He died in my arms. And then when I was 25, I was shot just in my leg. And I've learned not to say just in my leg because our community is we're so prone to gun violence. I say just in my leg. But the actuality is I could have just as easily lost my life when that shooting happened. So I've been affected by gun violence personally, and I've lost numerous friends to the way we grew up. And I come from a gang culture. And it's plagued my family and my friends. I've lost so many friends to gangs and gun violence. And today in my work, I respond to the hospital 24/7 for any person of color coming in suffering from community violence. And I see firsthand how gun violence is destroying our families and our community. So, I mean, that's the catalyst. That's the main reason why I do the work that I do. One, because I took so much from my community when I was out living that lifestyle, and I want to give back. You know, you get older, your ideologies change, and you grow up, and I want to be a part of the solution and not the problem, right? And I know that people who have lived with lived experience sometimes can do the most effective work. And I believe today that I went through that to help another young man, or to save a young man's life, to prevent them from going through that. That's why God pulled me through that. The thing about gun violence, it's something that it seems like it doesn't get older, it gets younger. It's getting younger. As I get older, gun violence is getting younger. It's in the hands of younger people. And so I feel like it's up to us, older gentlemen, someone older, to give back and to reach out to those young men and to try to prevent some of the wreckage that can be caused from it. Another thing about gun violence that my experience with is that it doesn't just affect one person. You know, we got to mind that there's a trickle effect what happens when a person is shot and killed, when a person goes to jail for shooting or killing somebody. So we're talking about multiple trauma happening, a wave of trauma happening that's because of one shooting. And so, with my experience with it, I want to be able to be there to combat something. You know, and that's why I do what I do.
I'm going to ask you the same follow-up question from your experience. What are some of the issues, the systemic causes that cause gun violence and are causing it to get younger and younger, as you mentioned?
I mean, I'm going to be cutting around. Like, I come from a culture of gang violence. For me, and what I see and what I deal with, it's from gang violence, and it's because of, I don't know what, you know, there's so many theories on what, you know, what makes of that, but I see kids coming at themselves over turfs, over women, over the internet, over colors, over money, over music. You know, so it's a culture thing as well. My culture telling me it's a community genocide. You know.
Thank you for sharing that.
I'll go Susan. So, I'm a police officer. I've been a police officer for 22 years. There was a gang team, the gun violence reduction team, for 19 years. So I've been around a little bit. I've worked closely with all three of these gentlemen up here. I've actually pulled him over. Actually, I pulled Nelson over too. So, but we, I mean, it might have been a negative thing in the beginning, but it's a positive thing now. I mean, Roy and I talk to each other probably every day. Nelson and I, we hug it out all the time. And this guy, we have a special bond too. But I met all three of these gentlemen through work. So it's not, the gun violence reduction team, we don't just pull people over, do investigations and put handcuffs on people. What we do is, we do that, but we also give people choices, men and women choices, and resources that they needed. And we reach out. A couple examples, I mentor kids too. I have taken kids, usually I take kids who want to be mentored by me to Red Robin. They like going there because of the French fries and the milkshakes. We go there, I dress just like this, and I talk about everything but their hard life. We talk about, hey, you ever been to a Blazer game? You ever been to a football game? You ever been to the beach? And we talk about that stuff. We talk about positive things that will affect these kids, things that they probably haven't seen yet. And I know these three guys do the same thing. I've taken kids to Blazer games. I've taken kids to a Timbers game. I even went to a Mariners game. And it was an awesome experience for them. They've never been. Some of these youth that we deal with and we talk to and try to help out, they've never been basically out of the city of Portland. You know, we try to help them that way. So we just don't put handcuffs on people. We give them tons of resources and try to get, especially the kids that are on the fence, try to get them out of that life. Try to see a positive outcome. Try to be a positive member of society. Give them lots of avenues and resources to go in different directions. we do that. I do that. I'm also, right now, I'm the crisis response team coordinator. It's a job I just took over a few months ago. I go out and I talk to victims of crimes. I help out the LGBTQ community, the human trafficking community, the gun violence community. People have been affected by all this crime. And I oversee 30 community members on my team, and we go out and we basically surround them with resources. And we give them as much help and need, victims assistance, as we can. I think I was destined to do that job. You know, when I first started my job on the gun violence reduction team, I worked afternoons in uniform. So I worked from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. and all we go out is we go out and stop young men and women in high violent crime areas, and we talk to them. And you know, we say, hey, how's it going? We kind of find out who's feuding with who. We bring that information back to our detectives and stuff like that, just so we have a base of who we're dealing with and who's involved in these crimes. And then I became the day shift. And I started doing other investigations, other type of stuff. And then I really started seeing how valuable that we can be, the police can be to our community by helping these young men and women out. And it's not just the juvenile, it's the men, you know, between 21 and 55. You know, men who are finally like, hey, I need to grow up and get out of that lifestyle, and I need to be, you know, do something else. I'm tired of being in prison, I'm tired of being shot at, and I need to help survive for my family. And so we help doing that stuff too, and I enjoy doing that. I love doing that. I work with Roy with healing her people, him and Tracy. We go out and we contact tons of victims. We give them tons of resources, and we try to make them better, try to make their life better. This stuff, the violence, this gun violence is creating huge barriers and rifts in families. Not only mentally, like Nelson said, but also financially. You know, if they got to do what they got to do to survive, to protect their family, you know, I don't hold that against them. But you know, they got to know that, you know, there's certain barriers and there's certain other resources that you can go to and get help from. And Roy and I and Nelson, we provide those sources for them. So I really enjoy helping people. You know, it's a different story from if you would ask me this 22 years ago. I just said, hey, I like to drive fast and, you know, chase people. But right now, it's all about helping people. So that's my story right now. As I got a little older, I'm a little slower. Hey, come on.
Let me ask you the same follow-up question from your perspective, and you work in the police bureau. What are the main causes that you've seen of gun violence in the community?
Well, I think Nelson and Roy said some pretty key things. I do think that social media plays a huge role right now. I just do, you know, all these different social media sites. This is how these kids, interact amongst each other. You have communities or neighborhoods who don't like each other, you know, or gang members don't like each other, and they have these rifts, and they can speak it loud and clear over, you know, these social media sites. And so, like, for example, if Roy and I wear a different color, Roy doesn't like me because I wear a different color, and Roy says, hey, I don't like the color that I'm wearing, and he specifically, you know, calls me out, then all my friends are like, hey, you better handle Roy. You better do, you know, he's disrespecting us. All right, so that puts pressure on me, and that's blasted all over social media sites. And so, you know, in order for me to stay good with my group, and I got to go and react to Roy, and that stuff goes on. It's a shame. I think also video games, music, you know, girls, women, it takes a toll. And for these young men and women who are in this violence, they feel so peer pressured that they got to react. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. It used to be over, you know, you live on this block and you live on this block. It's not that way anymore. It's about, you know, who's reaching out to who. And everybody in the city of Portland, it's a small enough city that everybody knows everybody lives in, generally, or where their family is from. So that's where they go and basically, you know, attack, which is very sad.
Thank you for sharing that. Mr. Harris, if you want to close us up, please. What is your lived experience and/or work experience with gun violence here in Portland?
First, I gotta say, I gotta shout out my guy Jay here, because he said he's been working for 19 years, and we joined together at 19. And he kind of exemplifies what makes this unit and how they grew up different, because my brother got killed in 2013. And pretty much all the time, one of the first questions whenever I received was, how's my mom doing or how's my sister? I have a niece, and he doesn't even know this. She is a senior at the University of Kansas as a double major in anthropology and biology. And when she went for the Z-Man scholarship, she couldn't even talk. So he sat in the hallway for 20 minutes just so she could calm down. And that scholarship, because she had been homeless, led her all the way to being an hospital. So, or my youngest daughter named Alexis. And he was a volleyball coach. And so again, when we think about this particular report, one of the things that makes them so special within the community that most of them serve decades in is it's like, Rob Richardson, one of the ways they always say we measure love in spelling T-I-M-E. And for a unit in the police to spend as much time invested in saying that's their community too, that's a unique thing that's always kind of giving them an edge that allows them to be part of seen as part of the community too. Because I remember 1980, now I can get back to 1988. My friends created the Woodlawn Park, and I got pulled over by a police officer. Pat. We get into an argument. We have some choice words for each other. He spends about 50 minutes so he can write me a $969 ticket for excessive littering because I threw a baby son kid's raisin box out the window. I flip out, I'm going crazy. Officer Hollingsworth comes, calms me down, because he was officer friendly in the schools when I was little. I know goodbye. Fast forward 2011. It's his last day as an officer, Crown's last day as an officer. There's a shooting. I'm working the shooting because I've been doing gang outreach and gang involved youth work since '93, since he was one of my kids when he was 14 or 15. And we both show up. And we just sit there and laugh as two adults, thinking about where we started and where we ended up. Because one of the things that happened is they were allowed to grow up with a whole generation of men and women in the community. They know, my amen. My mom, my dad. My dad died. And again, this is the unit tasked with knowing the most at-risk, high-octane, high-violence group of people. Like for me, my history is simple. It's funny that Roy talked about, I just got shot in the leg, because that's how I started getting shot in the leg. Because my mom had 5 brothers, all 5 of them shot, one being killed. But my parents been shot. But I know it's like to be standing with a friend and say, okay, I'm gonna go get some blood pressure, I'll be right back. And come back and he's laying right there dead. I know what that's like as a person. I know what it's like to have the first victim of the drive-by shooting where he missed in that day. The significance of that means he missed shooting me in the head because he shot my car 5 times the night before. And so, like when he talked about getting shot, and Jay understands this, because once you get in it long enough, you understand we ain't really on different sides. It's a fraternity where we compete. The only difference is if he wins, they go for beers. Now the loss gets you fine. But it's that, and we understand because the same cultural norms, the same values, the same respects come across. But again, we end up like that. And so for me, as I look at this over this whole spectrum of time, I've seen it all. I've literally worked as an outreach worker. Talk to a kid. The time it takes for him to walk out that door is dead. I know what it's like to tell his cousin, okay, I'm going to see you in the morning. Come on, that's like when I get home, and we split up at 4:50, the 6 o'clock news has you on the street. And so for me, I do this because me and my friends started all this. People I didn't like as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old started all this. what he wanted to grow up and get at is what me and my friends started. What my little brothers and they want to get at is what his brother and them started. And we all grew up going to the same village. We all grew up playing the same little league baseball teams, football teams, wrestling, walking to house parties, all of that. And so for me, when I look at this, and I have one friend, and I remember you know James Neal. We were sitting in front of the old store on 14th and Deacon. This was at 1990. Right at the uptick of a lot of the people, right at us getting old enough to either drop out of school or be that first generation out. And we sat and really realized, oh, all this madness, we started this as 18 and 19. But we used to fight a lot. And then it became left. And then it became left. Because anybody will tell you, once you start, two things are going to never stop happening. You're never going to stop having gangs. They'll just have a different name because kids are always going to find ways to affiliate themselves with that group. And the other part is, in America, you're never going to not have guns. So I can kind of answer his next question about the violence. Because all these things are manifestations of the only problem we really have. In America, we have legalized conflict resolution. We have made violence and death and the immediacy of it the way to resolve big conflict, to resolve small conflict, the conflict of disrespect, the conflict of internal locus of control act, vis-a-vis suicide. We have said it's okay from the time of Cowboys and Indians to the Terminator, to the Wire, to Chicago PD, to Law and Order, to everything, from as early as possible to tell you lethal force is a legitimate way to resolve conflict. In communities of color, we find out, most boys, any study will tell you this, the biggest determinant of behavioral expulsion, especially when you do little kids, is the lack of vocabulary, which means they physically act. So we pathologize all the way to the point where we can get them bombarded with images to say, okay, we're hitting is bad, but okay, you can get, if you rob somebody and you pull the gun and take it, that's a legitimate way to deal with the conflict of lack. If somebody laughs at me and they get 10,000 likes on Instagram, making a live post of me shooting them is an immediate way to end the conflict of disrespect on a very popular day. If I see you as my enemy because someone has conditioned me that I shouldn't fight you, using lethality to define my manhood, my loyalty, my allegiance, my ability to be somebody makes all the sense in the world. So as we've talked about, and for me, I'm working with others that I've done, I'm working with others and I've done all these things, which is giving me a nice cornucopia of knowledge to look at this in one simple way. As long as we keep trying to sugarcoat and address the fact that we live in a culture that sees violence as acceptable, unless it's a white kid. Because as soon as a black kid does it, we can monetize his inability to conflict resolution. It's called prison industrial complex. It's called a lack of resources that allow the have-nots to increase that get those guys overtime. Not that they really want the overtime, because who wants the overtime to deal with that? Right. And you leave here with nothing. This is the #1 way any system you ever run into will prove it don't give a damn about fixing this problem. Anytime you hear law enforcement, city, state, regional governments say they want to address a problem, they want to address violence, they are lying to you. They are trying to perpetuate the myth that that changes things, because by definition, check Webster Dictionary, pull out somebody can Google it. Address is defined as to Because there's this beautiful word called redress, which means to look at a problem, turn it 180 degrees to a solution, up to and including compensation for harm. Now, most people will say, well, we can't pay everybody to fix stuff. But here's what you can do. Fund programs like this that redresses harm. Because now the resource that they have is people dedicated to helping them. Don't make them social workers. Let them be police officers and do what they do. Detective work. Find data. Collect data. Disaggregate it and disseminate it for others to interpret. Because here's the thing. Like he said, when he was a cop, I was there. Why would you want high octane? I want to chase somebody, trying to chase somebody, tackle them, put them in a hole, and then talk about therapeutic interventions and motivational interventions. But again, we have to look at this like we want to fix the problem. And to fix the problem, we have to be honest. All of this is conflict resolution. I don't like myself. I don't like what I see in the mirror. I don't like what I see over there. I don't like your color. Whatever I don't like, how do I resolve this conflict and look like a man, or look tough, or look like the guy in the movie, or go out and blaze the glory? Until we say, okay, we want to really start resolving conflict resolution, what we're going to do is what happens with people in hospitals, illness management. So if we can get away, so the answer in a long way. If we can get away with illness management and get at the root cause, which is the problem we have with conflict, and start that with little kids, and it can be as simple as, hey, let's really invest in making sure that when a kid hits first grade, he really does know 35 letter words. Let's make sure that third grade reading score isn't something we research every 5 years and then we have dumb 8th graders. Let's really invest in that. Let's do all the things we can do upstream. Vis-a-vis, let public health come up with the ideas about how to make people healthy. And then, let's be honest, do we really want to change? Because we want the same gun laws. We want to value guns as images. All this is blowing smoke up everybody's butt. So let's not play. I lost enough people to this stuff. I've been shot myself. It's not something to play with. Because the reality is this. Like he said, they don't just cover the black kids shooting the black kids. They cover domestic violence. They cover fights. They cover drugs. They cover mental illness. And he knows it, and I'll say this because I'm just saying it. If you let the solution help black people stop catching colds, white people don't catch them. If you take care of the least and invest in their health, those who already have a leg up have an additional protective factor. All right, I don't know. Sound like that? Okay.
Thank you to all of our panelists. Let's give them a round of applause. I'm going to next call up GRT to give their presentation. It's about 25 to 30 minutes. If you can just write your questions down on the blue note cards, you can pass them out, and then we'll do a question and answer session at the end.
All you gotta do is say,
That'd be great.
Start us off with our presentation on GRT.
First of all, this is going to sound academic after this panel. This panel is real. That is why we do it. For us, we are passionate about this job. This is why we do it. This is why we choose to work in this area. We want to give a voice to the people that can't speak, either because of community trust issues or because they're physically unable to speak to us. We want to be their voice and hold people accountable and try to reduce, and I love the word redress, the gang and slash gun violence issues. So this is going to sound academic to this previous thing. If you nod off, I totally get it because that was real. This is very academic. So my partner for tonight, Steve Wilbot. He is one of the detective sergeants for the division. Monty here. All right, today's objective is basically just an introduction, kind of a one-on-one on what the gun violence reduction team is. So some of the objectives, I won't do death by PowerPoint. I made the PowerPoint available, so if you want, just get hold of the facilitators later, they'll get you a copy, so this is yours. So what is the gun violence reduction team? What's the difference between what we call GVERT now and the old gang enforcement model? Who we are, what we do, what's the direction? Do we make things up, or do we look for natural best practices? Do we facilitate meetings like this to get answers to help us? We don't know it all. We're going to get it wrong. So we look for outside help to help us get it done. For current trends, Q&A, there's cards out for you folks. Later in the breakout session, we'll try to address those as best as we can. So again, our data is being processed as we speak, so hopefully we'll get that within a month or so. That'll be a totally separate conversation. So we don't have that tonight. So I apologize for that, but we're working to get you the most accurate. I don't want to come up here and give you some information that we think we're going to see. I want to get the final answer that's been vetted by other people before we speak to it. So the mission statement for what we call the gun violence reduction team is to reduce gun violence in the city. Basically, we want to prevent shootings, save lives, stop the shooting. That's our #1 objective. We do this through proactive and investigative means. Again, we also really stress intervention prevention strategies. We work alongside the Office of Youth Violence Prevention. That's with the outreach folks who've done a lot of work. But first of all, I apologize. I got shout out to my man Jose over there. 4 years ago, at a Breaking Bread hosted by Sam Saxon Novo, me and him had dinner. Today he runs up, gives me a handshake, hugs me like, remember me? I'm like, absolutely. So, Jose, keep it real, bro. That's just amazing. Just 4 years ago, you just recognized me. Good to see you. So again, work with outreach partners who are huge. And again, healing hurt people. I can't disperse the great work they did. I was with Dr. Alicia Moore when she started the program back in 2011. The impact they get, if you don't know what that is, once a person gets shot and they're in the hospital, what they call it the golden hour, is that person experiencing trauma and they try to get there at that time to get into prevention intervention strategies where they're the most willing to do so. So shout out to the healing hurt people out there. Great work. So the shift in focus. About 2018 October, the Police Bureau and the Tactical Operations Division, which the old gang team fell into, changed the focus. Before, we focused on criminal behavior associated with gang-impacted individuals. If you're a gang member or associate and you're involved in criminal activity, it could be robberies, prostitution, drug selling, gambling, you name it. That's what we looked at. Anybody associated with gang involved in criminal behavior that affected the community. Now, we look at shootings, all shootings. So, all shootings revert to Sergeant Wilbon or other sergeants, and most of the cases will be assigned, investigated by us. However, if there's domestic violence, or domestic violence who will have expertise in those, that they deal with outreach workers, their own domestic outreach advocates, and special prosecutors, they can work those cases a little better than we can. So those go to them. Robbery deals with robbery cases, and obviously homicide and suicide is referred to the homicide division. So the whole mission of what we call GET was to disrupt the cycle of violence, specifically gang-related violence. So for us to investigate, you have to be a gang or group nexus for us to investigate. So kind of like best practice nationwide, and it was kind of, we should be looking at all shootings. So we can help dot the I's, cross the T's, a lot of them are related. So we went away from just gang-related incidents, which again talk about shooting, robbery, assault, prostitution, drug trafficking. Now we focus on all shootings, and they'll get my perfect. Can't speak for them, but we work with individuals who have these gang affiliations and work with them, intervention, prevention, and now you see they're good friends outside of work as well. So that was a focus as well as a lot of intervention and prevention. And I'll throw this out there because this is the model that the police bureau works, the 21st century policing. You're going to hear a lot of reference to this if you're in these type of community work groups. Again, you have a copy of this. There's a link to it. It's a huge report, but what we, GWORK, take out of this is building trust and legitimacy. Trust for us is huge. The trust we make with our, I can't speak enough about Huber and what he does with folks up here. You see the true relationship building. Nelly, I know 3 years. He's phenomenal. I can call him, whatever. And we're like this. At first, I was like Huber. I was a lot skinnier, faster, and I just want to drive cars fast. Sketch bad guys. 27 years ago. Fast forward 27 years. It's all about people, relationships. Seeing the effect that gun violence has on families, and I had personal friends who got shot and killed, and just seeing that just kind of wrecks not just the people there, but everybody around them. So, I won't take their story, but that's what we do. Again, build trust and legitimacy. That's why we're here. Work on that as well. Some of the definitions, again, death by PowerPoint, I apologize. But you hear us talking, when we start talking more, you hear this repeat shooter, the person that we've identified was involved in 2 or more shootings. High-risk person, a person who's been identified as having a substantial probability of being involved in or becoming involved in a gun violence incident. Involved suspects, attendant victims, unattended victims. And how we do this now is through our police reports. Again, all the shootings come through our team, so we look at who's involved in these shootings. And we see a common thread, a common victim. For instance, house 1, 2, 3, 4 Main Street is getting shot at numerous times. We will call out outreach, we call out the Huber's team. We go out there and work with the family. A lot of times the families want to cooperate with us because of trust and legitimacy issues. So we'll send outreach out there to see what's really going on and have that one-way communication. We don't use them to get information for us. We want to help the family get out of the cycle of violence. So that's CRT, that's outreach, and that's what they do. Group gang nexus is a shooting incident which the investigation identified a particular circumstances where there shows a group of gang relation, and opposite non-gang group shooting, domestic violence, your road rage, suicides, drug-related shootings, and your instant conflict, which is the road rage one, class example, instant things. Next slide. Again, number one goal for us is, again, prevent shootings. Stop the violence, break that cycle of violence. For us, we're seeing retaliatory shootings. We want to stop those who get ahead of the curve. We're going to do this with enforcement, intervention, and outreach. Kind of that 3-pronged approach is kind of the overused term, but it's true. It's a 3-pronged approach. Again, part of move on. We'll talk about the 3-pronged approach.
So this is, in essence, kind of a model of the way that we do police work, part of the strategy of stopping or preventing gun violence. So I want to look at number 1, which is outreach, education, and community engagement. The reason why that's important is because through those outreach means, educating young folks, being engaged in the community, that's how we get folks to think for themselves, to not want to engage in gun violence. And So I come to work, I think I'm working 19 hours today out of necessity because we need to be out there and managing this. I want you to picture this. Imagine you come into work and there's no shootings. Imagine that my shift is filled with going out to talk to people, educate folks, be in the schools, answer questions, ice cream, basketball games, all this stuff. Imagine a community with no shootings, right? That, if it's going to be achieved, is going to be achieved number one, right? Well, here's the problem. Today, we're sitting at 320 shooting incidents in the city of Portland. 320. So number two, for those 320 shooting incidents that have already occurred in 2019, GBRT responds to that incident to investigate, right? Our goal then is to investigate the crime, figure out the nature of the shooting, prevent further retaliation, hold shooters accountable, and then care for the victims. But I want to think about this. Responding to a shooting, the damage is done. There's already victims. There's already a young person maybe that took violence into their own hands and has committed a crime that inevitably, if we do our job under number two, will hold them accountable. Nobody wins. We're talking about somebody who could be dead, seriously injured, young people off of prison. Okay? We may solve that investigation, but the damage is done. So number two, we're going to respond to the shootings investigation. And again, we're sitting at 320. I would say that there is a presence of gun violence in our city, averaging about a shooting a day. And that's where number three is super important. So let's think about this in a linear process. So a young person makes the decision that they're going to go engage in gun violence. And I'll say one of the trends that I see looking at the shootings, and as barbaric as it may sound, it's human beings making a conscious decision to go hunt down other human beings to shoot them. Okay? Think about that. So when someone makes a conscious decision to go engage in gun violence, fast forward the steps to they get to wherever the crime scene may be, the shooting may occur, right? Think about this. Decision to make a shooting, the steps to carry out that shooting. Right here in this area is where number three comes into play. To intervene and stop that shooting, to stop that person who has made the decision to go harm someone else, to go kill someone else. Stop them before you do it. And here's why the proactive police problem is super important. I want you to think about it like this. Person makes that decision. They're on their way to go shoot somebody. If they get there, we're too late as a community. We're too late as law enforcement. But say we intervene with a traffic stop, right? And we handle that traffic stop as best as we can. Take a person into custody for possessing the gun that they intended to use to shoot somebody. We have a much better circumstance. We have a lesser crime to hold that individual accountable. We have no community trauma. And it's kind of scary in this area for the community to accept because we don't know what we prevent when we prevent it. Make sense? But this person right now, who was intending to go commit murder, is now, we intervene, being held accountable for a lesser crime, a gun crime, a possession crime. And when you get arrested for a possession crime, you have options. You have resources. Maybe a little time in jail, but not life. Not 25 to life for shooting somebody. Maybe you get a probation officer. Maybe CRT comes and sees you. Maybe outreach gets to you. That life, being held accountable for a lesser crime, now has options. Options that person never would have received if they carried out the shooting. So that's why proactive police work number three is important, but often I think it's overlooked.
Summary, we just want to stop shooting. So we talk about outreach intervention. We work hand in hand with top people in this group, and also youth violence prevention. We're all Harrison, the founding fathers. We talk to me a lot about this world. I'm originally from Hawaii, and We have gangs and all that back here, but when I came here, it's a different type of gang culture, and a lot of the guys back there kind of come with the real. We always, people, my term is like there's a lot of phony people out there that want to say the right thing at the right time, but for me, it's about keeping it real, and those guys up here, they just keep it real. So again, it's the link's on there, but that's Tom Peter's office, Office of Youth Violence Prevention. Attacking the root causes of problem neighborhoods, rather than simply focusing on the policing efforts. Like when we get involved, that means other things have failed. So we really want to get the root causes and prevent us from actually. When police get involved, it's always something happens. We don't want something to happen to have us cause to react. So again, the link's on there. Tom Beebe, he'll be here. If any questions, that's good. Team makeup.
So essentially for us, GBRT right now on day shift has 2 teams, led by 2 detective sergeants. My team, and then Sergeant Mark Friedman also has a team of detectives. We have detectives and officers assigned to us. And we are virtually a clearinghouse for all shooting investigations. All shootings come to us, and then we make a decision based on the nature of the shooting, who that shooting is handed off to. Again, if that's a domestic violence nexus, we will likely hand it off to DV, but not always. If it has a robbery nexus, the robbery detectives are the experts, so we'll hand it off to them. But ultimately, they come to us, and the purpose of that is that every shooting incident in the city of Portland gets a solid and fair look, and the initial steps of investigation to close it, and we make the determination on the best course to solve that crime. Oh, sorry. So our afternoon shift team, again, 2 sergeants, and then has a team of officers, primarily uniform patrol. They work the afternoon shift, which is 1600 to 0200 in the morning. The bulk of our GBRT shootings come within that time frame, so they spend a good deal of their time outside of the proactive work responding to shootings. Usually they're within minutes of the scene, getting the first look at some of these shooting investigations, and also help triage where they go. Sorry, we're tag teaming this. And sorry, the experts up there running the PowerPoint who runs the afternoon team. He also facilitates the outreach meetings with the Office of Youth Violence and Prevention. They have a large hold on some of the community outreach that comes out of GBRT, including a basketball on Saturday. So that's the type of stuff that they do.
Kind of going back a little bit in time, we'll go back to 2008. Show 2008, everybody? Here we go. So that is the gang group shootings from 2008. It's kind of hard to see, but then you see those spots that kind of shows where the shooting was 2008. Fast forward 10 years, that's the map. It's spread all over. Again, you don't deal with the neighborhood issues everywhere. It's opportunities and blocks don't matter. It's kind of, it spreads everybody thin across neighborhoods. And as far as having like, 8 or 10 officers that work GBRT specific, where do you assign those officers to work? So we kind of use the data and assign them where the shooting can happen.
So we're averaging about a shooting a day, and I'm telling you, by working with the commander to throw this PowerPoint together, it seems like every time we put numbers up, they change. Shootings will come in, including one early this morning. So this is about 2 weeks ago, so we're at 220. But for purpose of the slide, we have 380 when the slide is put together. And the breakdown of that is we would call 234 of those, which includes suicides. You can see 25 of non-gang or group nexus shootings. That's kind of how we categorize them right now. With gang group nexus shootings at 74, and that's a bona fide, legit investigation that leads to that conclusion. The one thing that's important to say about the non-gang group nexus shootings, robberies, DVs, road rages, things of that sort. A huge portion of those are unknown shootings where we show up, there's cartridge casings laying in the street, but there's no one there to tell the story.
And so in those shootings, I didn't want to give the false misrepresentation that repeat shooters and gang activities
Are not in that sample, if that makes sense. A huge amount of the shootings are just simply unknown.
So it's like looking at strategies. So we don't just sit in the office, drinking coffee, having donuts, thinking, hey, what are we doing today? That doesn't work. So we kind of look nationwide, what is the best practice out there in relation to reducing gun crimes? And we look at studies that involve a holistic approach, not police tactics, not police investigative strategies. It's like a holistic approach. How do we get to those three prongs? What studies using those three prongs have shown to be effective and have shown proven results in actual communities? So there's a ton of studies out there. A couple that we look at is BERF. Again, there's links to it on PowerPoint. Police Research Executive Forum. It's a group of academics, social services, and law enforcement that work on that three-pronged approach, and they give a lot of recommendations. So again, I listed it on here. It's a great read. It's an easy read. It's not a textbook style read. Again, what they came out with is gun violence is not only a crime problem, it's a public health problem, economic problem, and social problem. All of these perspectives must be taken into account to find solutions. Strategies and programs targeting gun violence must encompass enforcement, prosecution, violence prevention, education, community engagement initiatives. What this is. So we are committed and we are passionate about this. That's why we're here. Again, here's a link to it. Next slide, please. Again, just more best practices that we look at. There's a link on there. What we've learned in the past year is we're already implementing some of these national best strategies by moving away from the gang enforcement model to the gun violence reduction model. So we look at all shooting incidents. No matter how many it comes through our office, we take a look at it. You never know if that links to another one that could solve a different case. We take a look at everything, and we use technology. So we're documenting and analyzing every casing that's found in every gun that we find. We are processing for evidence. And also, in fact, the best practice, we hired this group, California Partnership for Safe Communities, and the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform. They don't work for the city. What they do is they come in, analyze what you have, and give recommendations. They're part of the Golden Ceasefire program, which I'll show you work phenomenally for their community. And recently, Milwaukee also used that program, and they're showing significant results as well. One of the big things that we see still today, and has a lot to do with, my kid just sent me what we call Snapchat, Trey 69, all the media is like, hey, snitch, 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 snitches get stitches. And that's what we're trying to counter, the snitch code. And how we do that is build trust and build partners in the community. So again, for us, the community engagement and building trust is huge. And that's how we get to solve the majority of the gun crimes, is with community input and good witnesses. A lot of people are afraid to talk to the police. Again, we're talking about ceasefire. There's a link in there as well. I recommend it. It's a really easy website to navigate and a great read. And also they're providing a study on the actual cost of what gun violence costs, the monetary cost of what gun violence costs the community, and how, if we reduce gun violence, how we can reinvest that money in something more productive. So that study is specific to the city of Portland to see the cause and effect. So this is straight from Oakland Ceasefire. We started the program in 2012, and drastic reduction in homicides and non-fatal shootings. Again, actual proven results and not just making things up. So this is the group that is going to come to Portland, actually are here in Portland, and they'll continue to work with us to kind of give us some best practice what to look at, both from the policing side to the outreach side. Again, just another slide, just kind of showing the same thing, showing the drastic reduction since they started in 2012. And I personally been to Oakland a number of times, and it's, I was scared. I had to lock my door to put gas. The car next to me got carjacked, pulled out of the gas station, and for them to really work on this problem, get back in results, it's proven. Excellent. Ceasefire model, what their pillars are, building partnerships among everybody in this room. Criminal justice agencies, public officials, faith leaders, community organizers, service providers, victims, and the community. Implement evidence-based strategies on police work. Reduce repeat offenders, that's your repeat shooters, and that cycle of in and out of jail. How do we fix that? Maximize opportunity to folks who don't have the opportunity. How do we maximize those? And again, the one key word you'll see over and over in this presentation you hear about is building trust, strengthening relationships. This is just a study done for Oregon in general. This is from 2018. And we'll have our own study for Portland specific. But this is from Giffords Center. They do gun studies as well. The cost of gun violence in the entire state, $2.6 billion. That costs about $854 per resident. And again, it's hard to see, but again, copies will be available. So if you're just interested in good reading, what could the Oregon do with $2.6 billion? Where should we reinvest that? Colleges, youth services, outreach. Again, we'll have one here in the future. Another thing that we started this past year was the Portland Area Crime Gun Initiative. This is sponsored by the federal government, by the U.S. Attorney's Office. What it does, it coordinates law enforcement in the area. Instead of working in silos, working together, working collaboratively, instead of just Portland, working on Portland folks, we know that there's a transition of gun violence in different communities, really working together. So here's our partners at Gresham, Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, the DA's office, Oregon State Police, FBI, ACS, the United States Attorney's Office. And what this gives us, next slide please, is what we refer to the technology called the IBIS machine. Without getting super technical and with all these fancy words, it's basically a machine that we put our casings, bullets, and guns into, and it compares them to other shootings. So it gives us good pointers like, hey, this gun was used at this other location, tying cases together, so we can track these crimes and kind of investigate a little thoroughly and quicker instead of relying on old-fashioned police work of who done it. We actually have technology kind of pointing us in the direction of shooting where these guns are used. Next week.
So 2019, there were 283 shooting incidents, not including the suicides, that occurred in the city of Portland. 87 of those investigations resulted in IBIS. 1 out of 3 shootings, we developed a lead that confirmed that firearm used in that incident was used in the second incident. And so that's 30% of the shootings that we investigate in GBRT. Firearm has been used multiple times. So
that's kind of alarming for us, showing that these guns are getting passed around, or the same individuals using the gun on numerous occasions. And current trends, like this is equal.
So some of the trends we see over the GBRT is citywide shooting events, and basically what that means, if you go back to the 2008 map to current times, it kind of was siloed to certain areas of the city. Now it's kind of gun violence is felt in every neighborhood, I think, across the city of Portland. So very difficult for us to say it comes from one specific location. The effects of social media, you heard the panel up here say, one of the biggest things that I could underscore is that the way folks communicate nowadays is through social media platforms. When there's conflict, and it's viewed by followers and folks that are, visiting these sites, it's compounded when, if the commander and I have a conflict and it's one-on-one and we're in a room, it's just between us. That conflict in the social media platform has an audience of hundreds to thousands of people that all have input that instigate this situation that elevates the tension of the conflict until it results into, in some cases, we'll see gun violence. Intervening in the cycle of violence, repeat shooters. I want to talk about that because as you saw the slide where we take all shootings, but only a specific amount we could identify as potentially gang or group involved. or a repeat shooter. And here's why that's important. In the everything else category, whether it's domestic violence, a road rage incident, a conflict at a bar, these type of shootings are, I refer to as one-offs. They're one person having a bad day, crossing paths with another person that has a bad day. And then a shooting event happens. Some could say that that's a random event. And as you know, when it comes to police tactics or strategy, or anything for that matter, it's very hard to stay ahead of randomness, right? It's very hard to proactively control randomness. But when you talk about repeat shooters, and this is me being in the unit for 7, 8 years now, both as an officer and as a supervisor, a lot of the trends that I see are the repeat shooters fall in the gang or group next to shootings that we see. And if you have officers like Officer Huber, who have been around for 19 years doing this specific work, and there are many like Officer Huber on our team that know the families, they understand the culture, they understand the conflict, they understand the shooting that leads to the next shooting, that if we don't get out ahead of will lead to an inevitable shooting in the future. And so understanding this, studying this, knowing the relationships, we could say it's somewhat predictable or measurable that gives us a strategy to stay out in front of the cycle of violence, if that makes sense.
I want to touch on domestic violence really quick. Domestic violence is a huge issue in our community. A lot of lethality there. We work with our domestic violence team basically hand in hand. They also have a threat assessment team where they do intake on domestic violence cases to measure the lethality and if there's a gun involved. They intervene on violent offenders, and we also have a gun disposition team. If you're served a restraining order, and part of that is you cannot possess a firearm, we will follow up and try to remove those firearms from that individual to prevent a cycle of violence, to intervene and get those guns out of the relationship. Again, talking about the behavioral health unit, we also have another threat assessment team there, and this is kind of the group that kind of looks at the mass shooting. You look at behaviors that can lead up to mass shootings. There's a term about leakage. In about, I can't remember the exact number, but the high percentage, 70+% before there's a shooting is what's called leakage. This person telling somebody, putting a manifesto out there, and somebody knows. So we really work with that and follow up each lead to try to prevent these shooting events from occurring. So a lot of that kind of deals with the mental health world. So we have a team dedicated just to prevent those type of shootings. And I think that is it. So I'm thinking taking like a short break, restroom break.
Yeah, we'll take about a 5-minute break. We'll break the come back and break into those restrooms. The questions will be answered in the small group.